Today we are at the fourth step of the Uranian cycle. You can think of it, if you wish, like the signs of the zodiac. As we are going step by step, 7 years each time, but there are going to be 12 steps. So maybe today is something like the Cancer year of the Uranus cycle. Yeah, why not? And at the same time, focusing on Uranus today. This is my choice. This is this part of the talk, which is a bit unusual, a bit my own thing to offer to you as a suggestion. And it doesn't have that much to do with the transits during the age 21, 28. But I start with a planet every time that I think has something to do very much with this particular age. And I mentioned it quickly last time when we were focusing on Mercury, the very first years of, say, young life, where we get a bit more independent between 14 and 21, they were very mercurial. And this is the initial, try to get something going with the development of the individual intelligence. In this part of it, which works with information, works with communication, and just takes a look around and tries to find meaning of among all the chaotic things and occurrences that come its way, especially in school, and especially during those first attempts of communicating with other people, and during the teenage years with other people your age. Now, here we are adding Uranus. It's like a pair again, like Moon with Saturn. I was considering as a pair. In a similar way, I think we can say that the whole period between 14 and 30, or 29, 30, just before the first Saturn return, is a very Mercury/Uranus. They blend in the middle, but these are two aspects of the mind. The more disciplined mind of Mercury against the very much more rebellious mind of Uranus. And there are many signs of Uranian things going on now that we enter the 20s. The whole 20s period, I think, is quite boisterous, quite different, and very, very challenging in a certain way. So just to recap quickly before we move on to the essence of what I wanted to share with you today, we had 3 stages so far, from birth to 7 years old, from 7 to 14, from 14 to 21. The first one was about the moon. The second one, we added Saturn, then Mercury, and now we are talking about Uranus. But you can also, as I mentioned, you can also think of this as we are in the stage of our life, which is in a way Aries, the beginning stage, the initial stage, which is 0 to 7. And it's a process, really. Like the zodiac is a process of growth, then we can convert that into this age periods as well. And this way get a lot more associations of what we can expect then. I'm doing this because I think the age factor is the disregarded part of astrology, the one that needs a lot more attention, a lot more practical application. I'm now talking a bit more generally because we don't have the time to go into very big detail about examples, or maybe you would mention some at the end when we get to the discussion. But there are so many different directions we can take each one of the transits, for example, that comes into play during this period or each period, and think how it displays itself in many different aspects of our lives. And we can see it working, we can see it manifesting. And if more people, I think, have that theory at the back of their mind that, for example, oh, it's Saturn square Saturn now that I'm going through, and that's going to last for a certain number of years, then even though that's something generic, applicable to everybody that is going through this age period, still we have some explanation, we have some context about the processes that we are experiencing and the challenges which otherwise, if they are completely meaningless, I think will be so much more difficult to go through. So we are doing a bit in the beginning of each of these talks about the overall atmosphere of the stage of life on which we're focusing through the prism of one of the planets. And then in the second part, I run you through the transits. Here we are going to have 2 squares today. Saturn squares Saturn, But this is the second time that this planet is doing this in its first cycle. So during our life, we normally, potentially, can experience three cycles of Saturn, from birth to 30, from 30 to 60, from 60 to potentially 90 and beyond, as Saturn takes just over 29 years to go around the sun. But during every one of these 30-year periods, just as a quick reminder, we're having two times when Saturn squares or is at 90 degrees to its original birthplace. And that's a moment of tension, a moment of challenge. I have tried before to make the distinction between the two squares. They are different. And we will do this a little bit again today because we are going to have two different kinds of squares in this age period. One by Saturn, called the waning square of Saturn, or in other words, the second square of Saturn, while at the same time, pretty much at the same age, around 21, everybody is experiencing the first time that Uranus, our main planet that's guiding the whole process here, is squaring its original place. And that's more of a an event which is important, probably even more than the Saturn square, because we simply have Saturn squares more often than Uranus squares. Uranus squares are probably going to happen to us twice in our lifetime, if we're lucky. So this is the age when Uranus, in a way, comes to the stage very forcefully, as this kind of square that Uranus makes to its original position is a waxing square. And that's going to create a very interesting dynamic, something of a battle even between Uranian forces and Saturnian forces. And there is also the Jupiter in the background. So that's another force, another planet, another clock. We can think of them as the hands of clocks. They all have their different rhythms, but every now and then they coincide in a way. They're doing different things. They're pointing to different positions of their timely cycle. But when they combine, we have certain moments in life when a lot is going on, and it is going to manifest in one way or another, even if we have no idea about astrology and no idea about what is really working as a force, which it's not a direct force, it's more a cyclic moment of time when it's almost inevitable for a stage of development to try to push forward with its task, with its demands, so that we simply move on. And one of the main themes of today is the topic of change. You know, we connect the planet Uranus more than any other planet in astrology with the topic of change and adjustment to constant change. The only thing that Saturn is really able to preserve over time is this dynamic of change. So they work together and they're inseparable. But in this age, almost like nature creates an internal conflict in each one of us, giving us a chance to feel extreme pressures from both of these forces simultaneously and in two completely different directions, in two different ways. Because one of the squares is the waxing one, the one of Uranus, that's going to be do more of Uranus, in a way, actional. Something will want to emerge as a factor which is now physically there and wasn't there before. So we would have to overcome some physical and material situation which will involve a Uranian change. But the Saturn problem, if I can call it this way, will be more mental, will be more emotionally mental, like internal process. So there will be a step back inside us, and a certain kind of Saturnian process is going to work its way, which might be a little bit depressive, which might be a little bit giving us the tendency to isolate. But if we manage to be somewhere in the middle between the tendency to isolate and the tendency to experiment now more than ever, then we are going to be in tune with what the cycle requires from us. And I think ultimately, the more we are attuned, the better things work out in the long run, as every step provides a foundation for the next step. And if we did well with what we were discussing last time, then it shouldn't be very difficult now. It shouldn't be so hard to go through the new things that this age requires. But yeah, I hope you see as we go along what exactly I mean by change, as change is present at every stage. But here it's its own kind of thing that we need to do